I want you to picture something for a second. You own a construction business, and you've been grinding for years, right? Waking up before the sun, managing crews, dealing with all those supply chain headaches.
Oh, yeah, it's a grind every single day.
Exactly. And you have finally hit that major revenue milestone you always dreamed about when you started out. But instead of, popping champagne and celebrating, you feel like you just hit a brick wall at 50 miles an hour.
Right. Because working harder simply isn't working anymore.
Yeah, your phone rings constantly because your team is just waiting on you for every single minor decision. And that real unplugged vacation you promised your family, it just feels like a distant, impossible memory at this point.
It is an incredibly painful place to find yourself, and yet it's the most common trajectory in this industry. You build the entire business on your back.
You know the exact margin on every job.
Right. You remember the quirks of every client. You know where every piece of equipment is parked. But eventually, human bandwidth just runs out. Your back simply cannot carry the sheer weight and complexity of a growing organization.
And that is the perfect setup for our mission in this deep dive for the Scaling Legends podcast. We are going to unpack exactly what it takes to build a true contractor operating system for growth in 2026.
We are talking about the complete transition, really. Going from running your company on pure chaotic willpower to running a scalable, predictable business.
Using structured human systems and artificial intelligence. Okay, let's unpack this. Because for anyone listening who wants to actually scale their operations without losing their sanity, this is the definitive roadmap.
To map out the solution, we first have to, diagnose the exact pain point you are experiencing. In the industry, this specific bottleneck is known as the chaos ceiling.
The chaos ceiling, I love that term.
Yeah, it's very real. What typically happens is a construction business will stall out somewhere between, say, $2 million and $5 million in annual revenue.
Because below that 2 million mark, one highly motivated person, usually the founder, right? They can hold the entire operation together through just sheer force of will.
Exactly. They are the ultimate superhero of their own company.
They are out there spinning plates and they're incredibly good at it. But as you pass that threshold, the math just completely turns against you.
Yeah.
It's no longer a linear progression, is it?
Not at all. The sheer volume of communication nodes between your subcontractors, vendors, project managers, clients, it multiplies exponentially.
And actually, looking at Smart Business Automator's market intelligence report, it reveals that 68% of contractors in this specific revenue range report working 60 plus hours a week, just to keep things from completely fracturing.
60 plus hours just playing defense. It's exhausting.
It really reminds me of the pinch point in an hourglass. If you're the business owner, you are that tiny neck in the middle of the glass.
That is a great analogy.
Right. Every single grain of sand, every material order, every hiring decision, every client complaint has to squeeze through you.
And because everything has to squeeze through that narrow opening, the entire operational flow naturally just grinds to a halt. The willpower that built the company suddenly becomes the very thing suffocating it.
Wow.
Yeah. The business becomes entirely reliant on what we call tribal knowledge, which means the rules of how the company operates, they only exist inside the owner's head.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
If I'm an owner and I'm already working 60 hours a week just trying to keep my crews from, installing the wrong grade of drywall on a commercial site, I literally do not have the hours to sit down in a boardroom and map out some grand corporate operating system.
Right. It feels impossible.
It feels a bit like telling a drowning man that he really needs to start building a boat.
What's fascinating here is that building an operating system isn't about finding time to work more. It is about fundamentally shifting how the business stores and acts on information.
Okay, so less about building a boat while drowning.
Yeah, you don't need a boat. You need to stop jumping into the water to save everyone. Building an OS means systematically extracting that tribal knowledge from your brain and embedding it into the structural framework of the company itself.
Making it independent of you.
Exactly. The ultimate goal is a paradigm shift. You no longer manage the daily operations of the company. The operating system manages the company, and you manage the operating system.
So it's about building fire breaks instead of just running around with a fire extinguisher all day.
Spot on.
But let's ground this in reality, because when most of us hear the phrase operating system, we immediately think of like a piece of software you install on a laptop. What does a human operating system actually look like on a Tuesday morning out on a muddy job site? or in a busy back office.
So think of it as the master playbook for your business. And OS, in this context, is the defined set of rhythms, meetings, scorecards, and processes that run the operations without you being the bottleneck.
It's the set of rules the team follows, regardless of whether you're standing right next to them pointing at a blueprint or, sitting on a beach 1,000 miles away.
Exactly. And the foundational layer of that entire playbook is the rhythm.
So these rhythms are essentially the rebar inside the concrete.
Ooh, I like that.
You might not necessarily see the meetings or the planning sessions from the outside once the building is finished, but they provide the internal tensile strength that keeps the daily operations from cracking under the massive weight of a $5 million project.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. Let's look at the weekly rhythm. It starts with a Monday morning huddle. Now, this is not a drawn-out, hour-long status update where everyone sits around drinking coffee and complaining about the weather.
Right, we've all been in those meetings.
We're terrible. No, this is 15 minutes maximum, and everyone is standing up.
Standing up, is that just like a psychological trick to keep them uncomfortable so they talk faster?
It absolutely relies on human psychology. When people sit down in a conference room, their brains just kind of settle into storytelling mode. They want to give you the long, winding backstory of why a permit is delayed.
Yeah, well, you see, I called the city on Tuesday, and then this guy answered.
Exactly. When you force everyone to stand, it introduces a physical urgency. It forces brevity. In those 15 minutes, the team does exactly 3 things.
Oh, what are they?
First, you review the scoreboard. Second, you identify the week's rocks, which are the primary immovable goals for the week. And third, you flag any blockers, anything standing in the way of those rocks.
That's it.
That is it. Everyone leaves knowing exactly what they are doing. Then you book in the week with a Friday afternoon debrief. This one is even shorter. 10 minutes.
Oh, wow. 10 minutes.
Yep. You ask 3 questions: what got done, what slipped, and what needs to carry over to next week.
So what does this all mean? You start the week with intention and end it with reflection. It's like a heartbeat for the business. But I imagine if people are just standing around sharing their personal feelings on how the week is going, that 15 minutes could easily derail. How do you keep the huddle anchored in objective reality rather than, subjective emotions?
Well, that requires bringing in the second layer of the operating system, the scorecards. Talking about work is very different from measuring work.
That makes sense.
Every single role in your company needs a scorecard with 3 to 5 key performance indicators.
20.
Definitely not 20 metrics that overwhelm them. Just 3 to 5 highly specific numbers. Take your project managers, for instance. They shouldn't be vaguely judged on whether a job went pretty well.
Right, pretty well. Doesn't pay the bills.
Exactly. Their scorecard should track the exact project margin, the schedule variance in days, and the change order rate.
Okay, let's make this real for a second, because construction roles can get incredibly messy. A lot of contractors have, say, a trusted superintendent who is out in the field managing safety, but at night they're also doing estimates for new bids, and maybe on Fridays they're dealing with HR disputes.
Oh, the classic Swiss Army knife employee.
Right. So how in the world do you build a clean scorecard for a person who is wearing 3 completely different hats?
That scenario right there is the root cause of so much chaos, and it's exactly why you do not scorecard the person you scorecard the seat.
The seat, okay.
This requires building an accountability chart. Now, most companies have an organizational chart, but an org chart just maps out titles and ego and hierarchy.
Who reports to who?
Right. But an accountability chart maps out functions. You draw a box for every essential seat the company actually needs to function: sales, estimating, project management, field operations. Then you define what that seat owns.
Okay, let me make sure I'm tracking this. So even if, he's called Bob, is currently doing the estimating and the field supervision, you still draw 2 separate boxes on the chart.
Exactly.
You have an estimator seat and a superintendent seat. And Bob's name just happens to sit in both boxes for now.
Precisely the point. Because if you just build a messy web around Bob, what happens when Bob quits? You can't hire a new Bob.
Right, Bob's a rare.
But if you have clearly defined seats, you know you need to hire 1 estimator and 1 superintendent. The golden rule of the accountability chart is 1 person per seat. There can be no overlap.
Because if 2 people are accountable for calling the city inspector, no one is actually accountable.
Exactly. And the data backs up how crucial this structural clarity is. Actually, Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report actually points out that companies running these structured, seat-based operating systems grow 2.4 times faster than those running on pure tribal knowledge.
Wow, 2.4 times faster. That's massive. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, having clear seats and 3 to 5 objective numbers on a scorecard does something massive for your mental health as an owner, too.
Oh, totally.
It removes the emotion from managing your team. You aren't arguing with a project manager about whether they are working hard enough or whether they care about the company.
Yeah, it's not personal anymore.
Exactly. You are simply sitting down, looking at the schedule variance on the scorecard together, and asking, how do we fix this number? It turns the dynamic from me versus you into us versus the problem.
It entirely changes the culture of the business. Now let's assume you have the rebar in place. Your team knows what seat they're in, and they know what numbers they're responsible for hitting. The next immediate hurdle is the actual execution of the work.
The how?
Right. If your team still doesn't know how to hit those numbers without texting you 20 times a day to ask for instructions, the system fails. This is where process mapping becomes mandatory.
Process mapping. Man, that phrase alone is usually enough to make a contractor's eyes glaze over.
I know.
They immediately picture a massive dust-covered binder sitting on a shelf that nobody has opened since 2018.
And they are absolutely right to hate that version of process mapping. You do not want to write a textbook. You want to apply the 80-20 rule to your top 3 revenue-generating processes.
Okay, so narrowing it down. What are those top 3 usually?
For most construction firms, that means estimating, project management, and collections. You can build the most beautiful structure in the world, but if your collections process is broken, the business bleeds out and dies.
Yeah, cash flow is oxygen. So how does the 80-20 rule apply to documenting something as complex as project management?
It means you only document the 20% of the steps that handle 80% of the daily work. Like if you build custom homes, 80% of your framing process is identical across every single house you build. Document that core 80%. Create a simple visual one-page process map. Do not try to write a 50-page manual covering every bizarre edge case, like what to do if you find a dinosaur bone in the excavation trench.
Leave the weird 20% to human expertise.
Yeah.
I love the idea of one-page maps. But again, finding the time to do this while running the business is tough. How do they prioritize this?
By utilizing what the framework calls quarterly rocks. Every 90 days, the leadership team agrees on 3 to 5 major priorities. Just 3 to 5.
Not 15.
Never 15. You might declare, this quarter, our primary rock is documenting the entire estimating process. Focus always beats ambition. You do not take on new initiatives until those rocks are complete.
This builds a cadence of actual execution rather than just endless brainstorming.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting, though, because everything we're talking about leads to the delegation framework. The rule states that as an owner, you should only do the work that only you can do. Everything else must be documented on those one-page maps, delegated to someone in the right seat, and then verified. But if I'm an owner, and I know for an absolute fact that my new hire is going to mess up a crucial material order, I am going to step in and reconcile those Home Depot receipts myself. It's my money on the line. I know I can do it perfectly.
I would diagnose that owner as suffering from a severe case of the perfection trap.
Perfection trap. Okay.
And holding on to those tasks is exactly the psychological mechanism that reinforces the chaos ceiling. Think about the math. An owner who has the skills to negotiate a $3 million commercial lease is spending their Tuesday morning doing a $25 an hour administrative task.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it makes zero economic sense.
It doesn't. Even if your employee can only execute that material order 80% as well as you can, you must delegate it. Because accepting that 20% drop in perfection on a low-level task is the required price you pay to buy back the hours you need to focus on high-level $500 an hour growth. You cannot scale perfectionism. You can only scale process.
You cannot scale perfectionism. That's a hard pill to swallow, but the logic is undeniable. So let's look at the next phase. If the ultimate goal is getting owners out of those $25 an hour administrative traps, we have to talk about the sheer volume of paperwork and coordination.
Oh, the paperwork is endless.
Because even if you have perfectly mapped one-page processes, scaling up means a mountain of permits, submittals, and change orders.
Yeah.
Human systems alone eventually hit a speed limit, don't they?
It is the natural evolution of a growing business. Once your human processes are lean and your accountability chart is clear, You look for technological acceleration.
Right.
The golden rule of tech is that you never want to automate a bad process. But once you have a solid human operating system, you bring in technology to handle the heavy lifting of scale.
And this is where AI-powered platforms built specifically for construction, like the Smart Business Automator, change the game entirely.
Yes.
Because looking at the specs for this platform, what stands out isn't just that it uses artificial intelligence, but how it applies it mechanically. We are talking about basic spell check here. It claims to take long, rambling audio from field reports and turn them into structured action items.
Which saves hours alone.
Exactly. But more importantly, it handles document intelligence, extracting specifications and drafting responses to RFIs. For anyone not deeply in the weeds, an RFI is a request for information. It's when a project manager has to stop all work to ask the architect a technical question about the blueprints.
It's a massive bottleneck.
So how does an AI actually help with that without hallucinating the wrong load-bearing beam size and causing a complete disaster?
The mechanism behind it is fascinating. The AI isn't just generating text out of thin air. It uses semantic search to cross-reference your specific historical project data, local building codes, and the current project specifications.
Oh, so it's grounded in your actual data.
Exactly. When an RFI comes in, the system scans thousands of pages of past documentation to draft a highly accurate response based on precedent. Furthermore, it integrates directly with your company's ERP, the Enterprise Resource Planning software, which is essentially the central nervous system for your money and materials.
So there is no double data entry.
None.
That makes a lot of sense. It acts as an incredibly fast research assistant. And I see it also evaluates the impact of change orders. So instead of just reading the change order from the client, the system pulls supply chain data via API from your ERP to flag if, say, a specific type of lumber requested in the change order is currently facing a shortage.
Which would delay your project timeline by 3 weeks if you didn't catch it?
Exactly the kind of proactive leverage we were talking about. And actually, Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report actually helps you benchmark your operating metrics against top-performing contractors in your trade and revenue range too.
It's incredibly powerful. It acts almost like a digital superintendent. It reviews your schedules to detect bottlenecks before they happen, identifying budget variance trends early. It gives you a predictive, forward-looking view of your project's health.
Rather than just a backward-looking autopsy 6 months later when you realize the job lost money.
Right, and this raises an important question. How much faster could your project managers work if they had an AI project assistant answering natural language questions across all active jobs rather than drowning in paperwork?
They finally have the leverage to act like the $500 an hour professionals they are.
Right.
Man, this has been an incredibly eye-opening journey today. Let's do a quick recap of the roadmap.
Sounds good.
We started by diagnosing the chaos ceiling, that painful revenue wall where pure willpower completely fractures under the weight of complexity. We established that breaking through requires shifting from tribal knowledge to a formal operating system.
Which means laying down the rebar.
Right, those 15-minute standing huddles and weekly rhythms. It means detangling your organization by building an accountability chart based on functional seats, not personalities.
Yeah.
And tracking it all with scorecards using 3 to 5 key metrics.
From there, you map your core revenue-generating processes using the 80-20 rule, keeping them to a single page. You focus the team using quarterly rocks.
And you ruthlessly cure yourself with a perfection trap so you can delegate those low-level tasks.
Exactly. Finally, once that human foundation is solid, you supercharge it with smart AI integration to handle the massive data load that comes with real scale.
It is a profound operational shift. But before we wrap up, where does this all lead in the long run?
Well, that is the perfect question to end on. We have spent this entire deep dive talking about extracting your brain into a structural framework and an AI system. But consider the long-term implication.
Okay.
10 years from now, when every single competitive contractor on the block has this exact same AI baseline, instantly handling their schedules, their RFIs, and the supply chain logistics, what becomes the new competitive advantage? Oh, wow.
Will the playing field become completely leveled by technology, or will raw human intuition, that gut feeling about a difficult client, or the creative problem-solving required on a complex, bespoke build actually become a premium commodity once again?
That is a phenomenal thought. When AI handles all the science of construction, the art of building might just become your most valuable asset. Identify your breaking point today, build your systems, and free yourself up for that future.
Absolutely.
If you found value in this deep dive, please take a second to subscribe to Scaling Legends on your preferred listening platform. Leave us a rating and a review. It genuinely helps other construction leaders find this information.
It really does.
Most importantly, share this with a colleague or a fellow business owner who is currently feeling the crushing weight of that chaos ceiling. You can also visit smartbusinessautomator.com to explore the tools we discussed today. Because at the end of the day, that real unplugged vacation shouldn't just be a fading memory. It should be a non-negotiable item on your calendar. Thanks for listening.